I stood there in a dusty pink dress I bought off clearance. It still had the tag inside. My shoes pinched, and my hair was falling out of the curlers I slept in, but I smiled because it was my sister's wedding, my only sister, and I was happy for her. At least, I thought I was supposed to be. I hadn't seen my mom in over a year. I'd been working 10-hour shifts at a hotel in another city, trying to pay off debt, saving money, sending part of every paycheck home, because she said she needed it for things around the house. I never asked for details. I sent $200 every 2 weeks for 2 years. That's $10,400. No one ever said thank you. I still sent it. Because that's what daughters do, right? The wedding was held at this big white country estate, the kind with a fountain. Everyone was dressed like they came out of a magazine. Lace, pearls, designer shoes. I walked in alone. No one looked at me. I walked up to my mom. She barely turned around. "Oh," she said. "You made it." That was it. No hug, no smile, just, "You made it." I helped my sister get ready in the bridal suite. I held her dress while she used the bathroom. I ironed her veil because the steamer was broken. I even fixed the clasp on her necklace with a safety pin. She didn't say thank you either. Before the ceremony, Mom came in with a tray of champagne. She handed glasses to my sister's friends, all of them, then walked out. I didn't get one. At dinner, they had me seated at the back, table 9, next to the speakers, behind the cousins plus ones and some guy from her fiancé's office. My name wasn't even spelled right on the card. No one asked me how I was doing, or where I was living now, or if I was dating anyone. I just sat and smiled. Then it was time for speeches. Dad went first. He cried, said how proud he was of his little lawyer. That's my sister. She just passed the bar last year. I helped pay for the prep course. They don't know that. I Venmoed her $700 in secret when she said she couldn't afford it. She told me, "Don't tell Mom. She'll freak out." Then Mom stood up. She took the mic like she was on stage. Everyone clapped. The band even stopped playing. She raised her glass and said, "To my beautiful daughter, my pride, my miracle." Then she turned, looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that night, and said, "You're not even really my daughter anymore." People laughed, like she was joking. But her face didn't change. She meant it. I just sat there. My mouth felt dry. I heard someone cough, then the sound of silverware against plates, then nothing. No one said a word. Not my aunt, not my cousin, not even my sister. I smiled, and I stood up. I walked out of the room, past the chocolate fountain, past the guest book, out onto the gravel driveway. I didn't even take my purse. I sat on the curb, staring at my hands. My nails were chipped. I had done them myself. My heels were cutting into my ankles. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't go back inside. I just sat there. After 10 minutes, the wedding planner came out. She looked surprised to see me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. She handed me a box. It was the thank you gifts they were giving to bridesmaids. A candle, a robe, a handwritten card from my sister. Mine was missing the card. I said thank you, took the box, and left. I walked half a mile to a gas station, called a rideshare, sat silently all the way back to the motel I booked. I couldn't afford to stay at the venue. That night, I stared at the ceiling. The room smelled like bleach and cigarettes. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Not even from my sister. The next morning, I opened Instagram. My mom had posted a photo from the wedding, captioned, "My beautiful family. So blessed. I wasn't in it." I commented, "Lovely picture." She deleted my comment. That night, I packed my things. I left a note at the front desk thanking them for the stay. I took the train back to the city where I live. No one noticed I was gone. 3 days later, I got a message from my sister. "Hey, Mom said you were kind of weird at the wedding. Everything okay?" I left it on red. Then I turned off my phone, because that was the moment I realized something. I was done playing the good daughter, and I had something for my mom, a gift, the kind she really deserved, but I didn't go to work that week. I told my manager I was taking unpaid leave. I didn't explain why. He didn't ask. Instead, I stayed in my apartment. A tiny one-bedroom on the edge of town, no TV. A broken heater, one window that didn't open, but it was mine. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of instant coffee and opened my laptop. I hadn't told anyone, but I'd been building something for 2 years. Not a business, not a company. Something quieter. I ran a ghostwriting agency, just me and a few freelancers I hired online. We wrote speeches, memoirs, books, quiet work, invisible. Nobody knew I owned it. Clients came from referrals. Most were rich, too busy or too clueless to write their own wedding vows, graduation speeches, obituaries. One guy even paid me $8,000 to write a breakup letter. That week, I got a contract offer from a publishing house. They wanted to acquire my small team and put me on retainer for high-level work, 6 figures. I didn't sign right away. I stared at the contract, and then I thought about the wedding, the toast, the words. "You're not even really my daughter anymore." I printed the contract, put it in a file folder, then I booked a train ticket. 3 days later, I went back home. Not for family, for closure. No one was expecting me. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I wore jeans and a hoodie. I knocked on the front door like a stranger. My mom opened it. She blinked twice. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. "I had something to give you." She didn't move, so I stepped inside. The house looked smaller than I remembered, dimmer, dusty. She hadn't replaced the blinds I paid for. The living room smelled like cat litter and something fried. She closed the door behind me. "Is this about the wedding?" she asked. "You were acting dramatic." Everyone thought so. I sat on the couch. "It's not about the wedding." She crossed her arms, waited. I pulled the contract out of my bag, placed it on the coffee table. "What's this?" I told her. What I'd built. How much money it was, what it meant. She didn't speak, just stared at the paper. Finally, she laughed. "You? Really?" I nodded. She picked it up, flipped through it, and said, "Well, I guess you're not a total waste." That was her response. Not congratulations, not shock, just that. Then she said, "You could help your sister. She has student loans, and she wants to move into a bigger apartment." I looked at her. No smile this time. "I'm not here for her." "Well, you're still family," she said. I stood up. "You said I wasn't your daughter anymore." "That was a joke." "It wasn't." She rolled her eyes. "You always take everything so seriously." I walked to the door. She followed me. At the doorway, I turned. "I used to send you money," she scoffed. "It wasn't that much." I kept the receipts, every dollar. I also kept the screenshots of you saying you needed it for groceries, fixing the water heater, helping Grandma. She froze. "I talked to Grandma last month," I said. "She told me she never saw a penny." My mom's face twitched. I stepped outside, then handed her the real gift. A simple envelope, sealed. She opened it. Inside was a printout, bank transfers, her name, her account. Next to it, a short letter. It said, "Since I'm not your daughter anymore, I assume this is a donation." She stared at it, didn't speak, didn't blink. I walked away, slowly, quietly. That night, I got a text from her. It said, "You're ungrateful." I didn't reply. The next day, I signed the contract, overnighted it. 2 weeks later, I moved to a city she's never been to. I didn't tell anyone where. I changed my number. I blocked her on everything. I watched my sister's life from a distance. She posted photos of brunch, new handbags, another new boyfriend. In one picture, I saw the robe I gave her for the wedding. It had someone else's name embroidered on it. I smiled and kept writing. 3 months later, I saw my mother's name in a comment thread. She was asking for donations for medical issues. Her post was vague. The link was broken. I didn't click. Someone tagged me. "Is this your mom?" I liked the comment, nothing else, because by then, I was no longer the poor girl in clearance dresses. I was booked 6 months in advance. Clients called me a lifesaver, brilliant, a genius with words. People paid me $15,000 to write their life stories, but no one in my family knew, and I preferred it that way, because silence was the best revenge, and being forgotten, that was freedom. But 6 months passed. No calls, no texts, no birthdays. Not even a forwarded chain email from my mom. She used to send those all the time, the kind with Bible verses and low-res angel gifts. It was quiet. I worked. I slept. I ate dinner alone. Sometimes I walked to the coffee shop down the street just to hear people talking. One night, around 2 a.m., I got a DM from my cousin, one I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey," she wrote. "Random question. Are you the one behind that ghostwriting service? My coworker just mentioned you." I didn't reply. The next day, another message from an old teacher. "I'm so proud of you. I heard from a client you helped write their memoir." I said thanks. Then I checked the analytics on my business site. There were spikes, traffic from my hometown, a lot of it. I knew what that meant. They were looking. I didn't care. I kept working. But I did start checking my old email, the one my mom used to have. That's when I saw it. A message from my sister. Subject line, emergency. I opened it. She needed money. Her law firm shut down. She was being sued. Something about breach of ethics. She gave legal advice to someone she wasn't licensed to represent. I didn't read the whole thing. At the end, she wrote, "Mom said you might be able to help." I stared at that sentence. Mom said, the same mom who told me, in front of 100 people, that I wasn't her daughter anymore. Now she was passing my name around like I was some kind of emergency contact. I didn't reply. 3 days later, another message. Longer, more desperate. "She's sick," my sister wrote. Like, really sick. She won't go to the hospital, but she's getting worse. She can't afford the bills. I'm trying to do everything myself, but I'm drowning. I sat with that email for hours. I didn't feel angry, just empty. I clicked to the next tab, reviewed another client draft. A 12-page letter from a daughter to her dying father. She paid $2,500 for it. Said she wanted to get it perfect before it was too late. I wrote back, made edits, sent it off. Then I closed the laptop. That night, I dreamed of the wedding, but it was different. This time, I was the one standing with the mic. Everyone was silent. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I woke up with tears on my pillow. Not from sadness, just from remembering. A week later, a package arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a photo album, old family pictures, me as a baby, me holding my sister's hand, my mom's handwriting in the margins. One note said, "Her first steps." She was so quiet, always watching. I stared at the page for a long time. Then I closed the album and locked it in my desk drawer. That night, I got a voicemail. It was my mom. Her voice was weaker, slower. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she said. "But I'm sorry. I don't remember why I said what I said. I think I was just angry, or scared, or tired, but you didn't deserve that." There was a long pause. Then, "I wish I could go back. I wish I had said thank you for everything." Click. I didn't call her back, not right away. Instead, I took the train again. This time, not to visit, not to forgive, just to see. I walked by the house. The blinds were still broken. A for sale sign on the lawn. The porch light was off, even though it was still daylight. I didn't knock. I kept walking, down the block, past the corner store where I used to buy gum, past the old park where I fell off the swing when I was 9 and split my chin open. My mom didn't take me to the ER. She said we didn't have the money. I ran my fingers over the scar. It was still there. I kept walking. 3 days later, I got another message, my sister again. "Mom's in hospice now. If you want to say goodbye, come soon." I didn't reply. Not because I was cruel, because I had already said goodbye, at the wedding, at the gas station, on the sidewalk outside her house. I had said goodbye with my silence, and I knew, even if I walked into that room now, nothing I said would make the past make sense. She had her chance, and she chose to throw me away. Like a dress that didn't fit, like a chair with a loose leg. She forgot that the quiet ones remember everything, every word, every look, every silence. And sometimes the ones you ignore grow louder without ever raising their voice. But I didn't go to the funeral. She died on a Tuesday. It rained that morning, I remember, because I was on a Zoom call with a client from Tokyo. and the power flickered halfway through our meeting. That's when the text came in. "She's gone," my sister wrote. No punctuation, just those 2 words. I sat in my chair, the screen still glowing. I didn't move, I didn't cry, I just sat there, listening to the sound of my radiator hissing in the background. That night, I made tea and read through the last message my mother ever sent me. It had no greeting, no sign-off, just a single sentence. "I hope you're doing well." That was it. I closed my phone and didn't open it again for 2 days. The funeral was small. My cousin posted a picture on Facebook, a few chairs, a plain coffin, my sister holding a bouquet of fake lilies. She was wearing black, but her face didn't look sad, just tired. I recognized the cemetery. I used to ride my bike past it as a kid. One time I fell and scraped my palms on the gravel. My mom yelled at me for getting blood on my jeans. I still have the scar on my left hand. After the funeral, I started getting messages. Not just from family, from people I hadn't heard from in years. "Sorry about your mom. She always talked about you. She was proud of you. She just didn't know how to show it." But none of them were there when I was scraping mold off her bathroom ceiling. None of them were there when she locked me out of the house on Christmas because I forgot to buy soda. None of them were there when she stood up in front of everyone and told me I wasn't hers anymore. I didn't respond. Instead, I took the album out of my drawer, the one she mailed me before she died. I flipped through the pages again. Some were stuck together. Some had water stains. One picture fell out, a tiny photo booth strip of me and her when I was 5. She was smiling. I wasn't. I looked into that child's eyes for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote something just for me, not for a client, not for money, not for approval. I wrote a letter to her. It was 2 pages long. I didn't write it to forgive her. I didn't write it to find peace. I wrote it so I'd never forget how it felt. How it felt to be treated like a shadow in my own home. How it felt to be erased. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope. Then I got on a train. Again, it was cold when I got there, windy. I walked to the cemetery, found her name. It was etched into a stone that looked like it hadn't been paid for. Just her name. No quote, no flowers, just gray. I sat on the cold bench for a long time. Then I placed the envelope at the base of the stone and left. I didn't say anything, not a single word, because the truth is, I had already said everything. She just never listened. 2 years later, I was invited to speak at a women's business conference. I almost said no. I didn't like speaking in front of people, but something made me go. When I got on stage, I looked out at a sea of strangers, and I said, I used to be the quiet one, the invisible one, the girl who got told she wasn't good enough in front of an entire room. There was silence, so I kept going, but I turned that silence into a business. I turned being ignored into focus. I turned every insult into fuel. Someone in the front row wiped her eyes. I ended the speech the way I wish someone had spoken to me. You don't owe anyone your loyalty just because you share blood. You don't have to go back. You don't have to forgive. You just have to keep going. Afterward, a woman came up to me. She said, "That story, it felt like mine." I nodded, because it wasn't just mine. It was hers. It was yours. It was anyone who's ever sat quietly in the corner, hoping someone would notice, and one day decided to leave. Not with drama, not with screaming, just with a quiet goodbye, and the kind of success no one sees coming. Now, I live in a place with big windows and sunlight in every room. I cook dinner for myself every night, not out of obligation, just because I want to. Sometimes I still think about her, but not in pain, just with distance. Like a story I once read, and closed, because in the end, she said I wasn't her daughter anymore, and I became someone else's inspiration instead.